let's jump into this deep dive. We're going to be looking at From Neurotic to Decent by Conrad Reicher.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to...
Yeah, I looked it over.
Okay, great. So this is a book that's really kind of focused on men's mental health, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what struck me right away was just how Riker lays out the mental health crisis. You know, especially for millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah.
I mean, the statistics he throws out there are pretty alarming.
It's a serious issue for sure, and he really connects it to, you know, a few different factors.
Yeah.
Like the whole social media pressure cooker,
Right.
the constant drive for success, and then the shifting gender roles as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm that's brewing out there, and a lot of guys are really struggling to navigate all of it.
I think one of the things that I found really interesting was his section on Facebook, depression.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, you know, seeing other people's seemingly perfect lives online.
Right.
It's like he digs deeper into the psychology behind it.
The mechanisms at play.
Yeah.
And how it actually affects your brain.
Yeah, it's like almost like our brains are being kind of hijacked by these algorithms.
Yeah.
You know, they're designed to keep us hooked on validation. And, you know, he even talks about his own struggles with Instagram addiction.
Right.
And how that affected his work and his relationship.
Yeah, that was really insightful how he shared that personal anecdote.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of people struggle with that, but they don't really talk about it.
Right. And it is insightful because it kind of gets into, you know, the dopamine addiction aspect of it.
Right.
You know, it's like we're chasing this high and we can never quite reach it.
Yeah.
But it's really taking a toll on our mental well-being.
Right.
Now, one of the things I found interesting was, you know, he contrasts this with the potential for connection that social media offers.
Yeah.
You know, it's not all bad, right?
Of course not. It's not all doom and gloom. There are definitely positive aspects to it.
Right.
But you have to be aware of the trade-offs.
Yeah, you got to find that balance.
Right.
And, you know, be aware of how these platforms can influence our thoughts and our behavior.
Exactly.
So it's definitely a double-edged sword.
For sure.
Now let's talk about, you know, one of the other big topics he tackles.
Okay.
Which is the over-medication of society.
Yeah.
This is something that I know a lot of our listeners are really concerned about.
Absolutely.
And he's pretty critical of the reliance on antidepressants.
Right.
You know, and he even questions their long-term effectiveness.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he brings in some evidence to back that up.
Yeah, he does.
He talks about a study from Edinburgh University that kind of challenges the whole, you know, prevailing narrative about antidepressants.
Yeah, and this was fascinating to me because it's like, you know, we're not saying that medication is never the answer.
Right.
But it's like...
But there's more to the story.
Yeah, it's like, are we overusing it? Are there downsides?
Exactly. And are there other options that might be just as effective?
Yeah, and that's kind of where he pivots to, you know, talking about what he sees as this more holistic approach. You know, focusing on things like cognitive behavioral therapy.
BT.
Yeah, mindfulness, meditation, and exercise.
Right, and those can be incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And they don't come with all the potential side effects of medication.
Exactly.
So it's really about looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, and I think what was really compelling was, you know, he shares his own personal experiences with CBT.
Right.
And how it helped him.
Yeah, it makes it more relatable.
Yeah, it's not just theoretical.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, he's actually tried this, and it's worked for him. So that really resonated with me.
Yeah, and he even goes into some of the core principles of CBT.
Yeah.
Like how it's about, you know, retraining your brain to think more positive and breaking free from those negative thought patterns.
Right. So it's almost like a mental workout.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you got to put in the effort to rewire your brain.
It's not a passive process. You got to be actively engaged.
Right.
And it can be challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But the rewards can be huge.
Absolutely.
You know, if you can get your thinking on track, it can really transform your life.
It can change everything.
Yeah.
And that's what's so powerful about CBT.
Yeah, it gives you the tools to really take control of your mental health.
Exactly. And it's not just about feeling better. It's about functioning better in every area of your life.
Exactly.
Your relationships, your work, your overall sense of well-being.
So it's definitely something worth exploring.
For sure.
You know, if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or just, you know, feeling stuck in those negative thought patterns, CBT can be a really powerful tool for change.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've talked about the mental health crisis,
Yeah.
the role of social media, the over-medication of society, and alternative treatments like CBT.
Right.
But Riker doesn't stop there.
No, he doesn't. He goes even deeper.
He does.
Yeah.
And this is where things get a little bit controversial.
Yeah, this is where he starts to ruffle some feathers.
He does. But I think it's important to talk about.
Absolutely. These are conversations that need to be had.
Exactly. So one of the things he tackles is the impact of what he calls social justice warrior culture.
Right. And this is something that a lot of men are talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot button issue. And, you know, his argument is that this culture has created a hostile environment for men,
Right.
which is contributing to feelings of anxiety and inadequacy. It's almost like there's this constant pressure to apologize for being male.
Yeah, and to walk on eggshells.
Right.
Constantly worried about saying or doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to clarify that he's not saying that all concerns about gender equality are invalid.
Right.
He's very careful to distinguish that. His critique is more focused on what he sees as this extreme ideology
Right.
that demonizes masculinity and promotes a victimhood mentality.
Right. And that can be really damaging
It can.
for both men and women.
Yeah, and so this is where he connects it back to his argument about reclaiming traditional male values.
Yeah.
Strength, resilience, stoicism. And it's not about going back to some outdated macho stereotype.
Right.
It's more about finding a balance, embracing those qualities
Right.
while also being open to vulnerability and emotional intelligence.
Right. It's about being a well-rounded man
Yeah.
who's comfortable in his own skin
Exactly.
and doesn't feel the need to conform to some external definition of masculinity.
And this ties into his emphasis on personal responsibility,
Yeah.
which is a core concept of his red pill philosophy. He encourages men to take ownership of their lives
Right.
and not fall into the trap of blaming external factors for their problems.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your destiny,
Yeah.
even if it means going against the grain.
And he's not advocating for ignoring genuine societal issues,
Right.
but it's more about focusing on what you can control and not getting bogged down in things that you can't change.
Right. It's about being proactive
Yeah.
and empowering yourself to make a difference in your own life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about his approach, is that it's not just theoretical.
Yeah.
He actually provides a lot of practical advice, for putting these principles into action.
Right. He gives you the tools you need to actually make changes.
He does.
Cool.
And we're going to dive into some of those specific techniques
Okay.
in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
But before we get there, I just want to touch on one more thing that I found really thought-provoking.
Okay.
He dedicates a whole chapter to the role of the psychology industry and its potential bias.
Right. And this is where he gets into some sensitive territory.
He does, but it's an important conversation to have.
Absolutely.
And, his argument is that the psychology industry has become increasingly feminized and that this has led to certain biases.
That might not be beneficial for all men.
Yeah, and again, he's not saying that all female therapists are bad.
Right.
Or that men should only seek help from male therapists.
Exactly. It's more nuanced than that.
It is. It's about recognizing that there might be certain assumptions or perspectives
Yeah.
that don't resonate with all men, and that it's important to be discerning when
Yeah.
seeking therapy.
Yeah. Find a therapist who understands and respects your unique needs and perspectives.
Exactly.
And this ties back to his broader message of encouraging men to think critically and not blindly accept everything they're told.
Right.
It's about taking ownership of your mental health journey.
Absolutely.
And finding what works best for you.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Finding what works for you.
All right, so that wraps up our discussion of part 1 of From Neurotic to Decent.
Okay.
In the next part, we're going to dive into some of the practical strategies that Riker outlines.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too, so stay tuned.
So let's dive into some of the practical strategies that Riker outlines in From Neurotic to Decent.
Okay, sounds good.
One that really stood out to me was CBT.
Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right, which we touched on earlier. And he actually gives like a step-by-step guide
He does.
for identifying those negative thought patterns and replacing them with more rational and positive ones.
Yeah, it's really helpful how he breaks it down into manageable steps.
Yeah.
It's almost like a recipe you can follow.
It is. It's like having your own personal CBT coach.
Right.
Right there in the pages of the book.
Exactly. And he even includes exercises and worksheets.
Yeah.
So it's not just theory. It's like you can actually put it into practice.
Yeah, it's very actionable, which I appreciate. Now, in addition to CBT, he also talks about mindfulness meditation.
Right.
And I used to think that was like,
Woo stuff.
yeah, kind of like new age woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people think that.
But he explains it in a way that makes sense.
He does. He demystifies it.
He does.
And he presents it as a really simple but powerful tool
Yeah.
for calming your mind and reducing stress.
And he emphasizes, it's not about emptying your mind.
Right.
It's about becoming more aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Exactly.
And he even provides specific techniques
He does.
like focused breathing and body scan meditation.
Yeah, those are great for beginners.
Yeah.
Easy to learn, and you can do them anywhere.
And he stresses that even just a few minutes a day can make a difference.
It can. It really can.
So it's about, finding those little moments of stillness
Right.
amidst the chaos of everyday life.
Exactly.
And of course, he also emphasizes the importance of physical exercise.
Of course.
He's a big advocate for weightlifting,
He is.
but he encourages men to find activities they enjoy, whether it's running, swimming, playing in a sport.
Whatever gets you moving.
Exactly. And what I liked was how he explains the science behind how exercise releases endorphin.
Those natural mood boosters.
Right. So it's not just about looking good.
Right.
It's about feeling good, too.
It's about both.
Yeah. And he doesn't shy away from addressing the practical challenges.
Finding the time.
Yeah, lack of time, motivation, all of that stuff.
Yeah. He gives you tips for overcoming those hurdles.
He does.
And making exercise a regular part of your life.
It's about making it sustainable, something you can stick with long term.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about CBT, mindfulness, meditation, exercise.
Right.
Now let's move on to another key theme he explored,
Okay.
which is the importance of building strong social connections.
Yeah, this is huge.
It is, and it's something that's often overlooked.
Especially in our increasingly individualistic society.
Right. Everyone's kind of in their own little bubble.
Yeah, it's easy to feel isolated.
Yeah, and Riker argues that isolation and loneliness are major contributors to mental health problems. So he emphasizes the need for men to create a support system.
A tribe.
Yeah, find your tribe. And he connects this back to his red pill philosophy,
Okay.
encouraging men to be proactive in forming bonds based on shared values and interests.
Yeah, it's about finding those like-minded individuals.
Exactly. And what I found insightful
Yeah.
was how he tied this back to traditional male role. He talks about how men used to form strong bonds through
Hunting or build.
things like that, and how that sense of camaraderie contributed to their overall well-being.
It's about rekindling that spirit of brotherhood.
Exactly.
In a modern context.
And it's not about excluding women.
Right.
It's about recognizing that men have unique needs and ways of connecting.
Sure.
Now, he also provides practical tips for improving communication skills, resolving conflicts, and building trust in relationships.
So it's about becoming a better partner,
Okay.
a better friend.
Yeah, a better human being overall.
Exactly.
So we covered a lot of ground in the last two parts, from social media to the psychology industry. But I want to shift gears a little and talk about some of the more specific tools and techniques Riker offers.
Sounds good.
One thing that really jumped out at me was his section on positive affirmations and visualization. I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical at first.
Yeah, I get that. It can sound a little, out there.
Right, exactly. But the way he explains it, it's actually pretty grounded and practical.
He does a good job of demystifying it. It's not just about repeating feel-good phrases. It's about consciously shifting your mindset.
Yeah, it's about challenging those negative beliefs that we all have, the ones that hold us back.
Right, those limiting beliefs. And he even provides specific affirmations you can use, like tailored to different areas of your life.
Okay, so like for building confidence or improving relationships or even achieving career goals.
Exactly. It's like creating a mental roadmap for success.
Yeah, I like that. A mental roadmap. So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about actively shaping your reality.
Right, and he emphasizes the importance of making it a daily practice.
Like a ritual, almost.
Exactly. Consistency is key. Now, he also talks about visualization, which is basically creating a mental picture of yourself achieving those goals.
Okay, so it's not just about saying it, it's about seeing it too.
Right. And he explains how that can actually program your subconscious mind and increase your chances of success.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? Like, how do you visualize effectively?
Well, he provides some specific technique. One of them is engaging all your senses.
Your senses?
Yeah, so it's not just a visual thing. You want to make the image as vivid and realistic as possible.
You're not just seeing it, you're feeling it, you're hearing it, smelling it even.
Exactly. The more real you can make it in your mind, the more powerful it becomes.
That's fascinating. So you're basically tricking your brain into believing it's already happened.
In a way, yeah. You're creating a neural pathway to success.
That's pretty cool. Another thing I struggle with is time management and productivity. It's like there's never enough hours in the day.
Hirala, that's a common challenge.
And Riker actually talks about that too, right?
He does. He argues that poor time management is a major contributor to stress and anxiety.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's definitely a source of stress for me.
Yeah.
So what does he suggest?
Well, he's a big proponent of prioritizing tasks. Figuring out what's truly important and focusing on those things first.
Okay, so it's about being strategic with your time.
Exactly. And setting clear deadlines. He also recommends breaking down large projects into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay, that makes it less overwhelming, like bite-sized pieces.
Right. And he even recommends techniques like the Pomodoro technique.
What?
Pomodoro technique. It involves working in focused bursts, like 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Oh, okay, I've heard of that. So it's be really effective.
It can be. It helps you stay focused and avoid burnout.
So it's all about finding a rhythm that works for you.
Exact. And minimizing distractions.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Especially with all the digital distractions these days.
Right. Social media, email, all that stuff. It can really suck you in.
It's a constant battle. So Riker's basically saying we need to be more mindful of our time and energy.
Exact. And that ties into his emphasis on developing a growth mindset.
Okay, what's a growth mindset?
It's the belief that your abilities aren't fixed, that you can always learn and grow.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being willing to improve.
Right. It's about embracing challenges as opportunities to learn.
So it's okay to fail as long as you learn from it.
Exact. Failure is just feedback. It's part of the process.
I like that. It takes the pressure off.
It does, and allows you to be more resilient. Now, as we wrap up, I want to touch on one last thing that I found really powerful in the book. It's about nurturing your inner world.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's about making time for hobbies and creative pursuits, things that bring you joy and fulfillment outside of work or
So
obligation.
like finding your passion.
Exact. It could be anything. Painting, writing, woodworking, playing music, whatever lights you up.
So it's about giving yourself permission to play,
Yeah.
be creative.
Right. And Riker argues that this is essential for mental well-being, provides an outlet for stress, allows you to tap into a different part of your brain.
So it's about finding that balance between work and play, productivity and creativity.
Exact. And ultimately, I think that's what From Neurotic to Decent is all about. It's about becoming the best version of yourself for your own well-being and for the positive impact you can have on the world.
Well said. So if you're ready to embark on that journey of self-discovery, I highly recommend checking out From Neurotic to Decent. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.